Golden State Media Concepts bring you Book Review Podcast, a haven for bookworms of all ages and the widest genres, from mystery to memoirs, romance to comedy, fantasy to sci-fi. If you love to read, this is a podcast for you. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Book Review Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah, and I am happy to be with you on this St. Patrick's Day weekend. Yes, tomorrow is St. Patrick's Day, and I've heard it said that on St. Patrick's Day, many people claim to be a little bit Irish. I am not really. I mean, I guess I could be a teeny, tiny, itty, bitty, tiny little bit. So on St. Patrick's Day, sure, I'll claim that like 0.5% or whatever it is. I should do the DNA test. I've always been interested in that. My parents both did it, so I guess I have an idea of what I would be. But it would be interesting. That's on my list of things to. The one thing I remember, and this is just going to solidify my church nerd status, is his first communion, when he had his first communion, and then one of the traditions was to go around, and I think they were giving him wine. I could be, anyway, something. He had an empty stomach, had his first communion, had the host placed on his tongue, then there was a celebration where he went around, and anyway, something about this celebration made him throw up, and the way he tells this story is, I remember it as being hilarious, that he threw up the body of Christ, and it was bad. He was going to hell, and Irish Catholic. I'm not telling it to its full justice, but I just, that's the part of the book, besides the dreariness and kind of the depressing nature of this ghastly poverty that he grew up in. That's the one anecdote that sticks out in my head. And you're probably thinking, yeah, you're a dork. Definite church nerd. That's the part that I just always think about, him throwing up the body of Christ and his grandmother being horrified by him, as though it's his fault, and, as though... No, not going to go there. Okay, so that is Angela's Ashes. Not the most uplifting of stories. Another book on the list that I saw was Cecilia Ahern, P.S. I Love You, movie that came out a while back with Gerard Butler and, what is her name? I can picture her. You're probably screaming at the podcast right now. It's her, Hilary Swank. And I read that book, saw the movie, enjoyed the movie. Of course, the movie and the book are different. The book was good. I enjoyed it. It had some funny moments. It had some poignant moments. I think what made me angry was kind of how the dead husband holds the woman hostage. So the husband is dying, knows he's dying, and puts together this whole series of events, letters and different things for after he's gone. And in some ways it's really, really sweet. And in other ways it just holds her hostage. She can't move on. And I just remember thinking, this is awful. She can't, you're dead, and you've got this hold over her. So in some ways I definitely had mixed emotions about that one. It is kind of a romance, but it's also, maybe not the healthiest romance, because she is very conflicted throughout the book, and sometimes starts to wonder if he really is alive somewhere, and this is all some kind of elaborate hoax or joke, and that part kind of bugged me. If you are now screaming at the podcast for different reasons because you loved that book and or you loved the movie, I do apologize. Just, one of those things where I was like, oh, stop that. Books set in Ireland. Nora Roberts seems to love Ireland, and she has many books set in Ireland. She tends to write several standalone novels, one or two standalone novels a year, and she's always got either trilogies or a short series of books that also come out. Many of these are set in Ireland. One of the earliest ones that I read was the Born In series, a trilogy, Born in Fire, Born in Ice, Born in Shame. It's about 3 sisters, and 2 of whom are Irish, one of whom is American. Not going to tell you why, but 3 sisters, and it's about their very, very complicated family relationships and takes place in County Clare. 3 very different sisters, and don't always get along, but through the trilogy then they start learning more about their past, more about their parents, more about the relationship that they have with each other, and of course they're all romances. I've talked a little bit about Nora Roberts before on the podcast. One thing that I really love about her books is that, you can say that they're predictable, that they maybe are a little formulaic, but what I love about a Nora Roberts book when I pick it up is that I know it's going to have a happy ending. I know everything's going to turn out okay. There's going to be some speed bumps, there's going to be some conflict, but at the end of the story, you're going to get your happily ever after. And you know what? Sometimes I just need that. Sometimes I need to pick up a book and know that it's going to, in some ways, be predictable, that I'm going to be able to say, yeah, this is going to happen. I know where this is headed, but that I also know at the end of the day, I'm going to get my happy ending. Everything is going to be okay. Sometimes in the world, I just need a book where I know that everything is going to be okay. And on that note, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll be talking a little bit more about books set in Ireland. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I will be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast. We are talking about books set in Ireland. Before the break, I was saying that sometimes I just need to know everything's going to be okay. And I was talking about Nora Roberts' books. She has, I mentioned the Born In trilogy. She also has other trilogies that have they're a little more paranormal, a little more supernatural. Most of her standalone books are not, but a lot of her trilogies are. So there is another one that is set, is it the Dance of the Gods trilogy? There's Morrigan's Cross, there's the Dance of the Gods. I don't actually remember off the top of my head what the trilogy itself is called, or maybe there's 4 in that one. Anyway, that takes place partially in Ireland, partially in other places, but I think the majority of it, a lot of it takes place in Ireland. That one is definitely supernatural, paranormal. There are wizards, witches, time travel, vampires, kind of a whole conglomeration of things, plus a lot of Celtic imagery, a lot of Celtic legends. There's even an alternate, kind of another dimension, another realm, another world that is very, very much like Ireland in that other realm. So part of it takes place in that other realm, part of it takes place in Ireland, but the other realm is very similar to Ireland. And then she has a newer one, and that is Dark. Let's see, there's Dark Witch, and that also takes place in Ireland. Has a lot of supernatural, paranormal in it. The one thing about that one that kind of drove me a little crazy was that she spelled magic with a K. That's just me. It was plural a lot. Blood Magic is one of those. Dark Witch is another of those. And Magic with a K, Magics with a K. It just kind of made me roll my eyes. But that's another one with a lot of supernatural stuff going on. There's always kind of an ancient evil. There's always a legend, good stuff like that. But then you get the romance and you get all of that. There's another one, The Gallaghers of Ardmore. And that is contemporary, as is the one with Magic with a K, contemporary, but still there are parts of it that are supernatural, a little more contemporary. Maybe it's more urban fantasy in ways that is 3 siblings and they own a bar, and they, again, you've got sibling conflicts and family and also a legend. And some of those are Tears of the Moon, something of the Sun, but there's 3 of those, and they have to kind of, the 3 siblings have destinies or fates that are tied to this ancient legend in the place where they live, and each one of them in their various ways fulfills part of that. So that gives you kind of an idea of the Nora Roberts books and where they go. There's always some romance. There's often some magic, whether it is or is not with a K. And then if you go and look, just do your Google search like I always do. There are so many books set in Ireland and so many books that I would love to read set in Ireland. There's a ton of series that appear to be set in Ireland, none of which I have read, but there's some mysteries, lots of fantasy with kind of Celtic roots and Celtic traditions in them, as you can imagine. I just realized that Nora Roberts, I just remembered or thought of Nora Roberts writing as J.D. Robb has a series. The main character is Eve Dallas. She is a New York cop. It's set in the not too distant future, and Eve's husband Rourke is Irish. I think Nora Roberts definitely has a fascination with Ireland, if her writing is any indication. And there is one book in that series that is set in Ireland. Most of them are set in New York, but they do go to Ireland in one book. And of course, Eve ends up having to solve a murder because that's what she does. And so there is that one as well. But also, even when they're not in Ireland, Rourke is still Irish. So I also thought, this is not a book. I was hoping it was a book and that I could add it to my to-be-read list. But have you ever seen the movie Waking Ned Devine? I love that movie. I just think it is hilarious. It takes place in a very teeny, tiny, tiny place in Ireland, and someone has just won the lottery. So the 2 main characters discover that someone in this teeny, tiny town has won the lottery, and it can only be, there's only like, let's say 30 people. I can't remember the exact number. So they set out to figure out who it was, who won the lottery. And you meet some of the quirky characters that are in this story. And it just, I'm, again, not doing justice in the way I'm telling it. But if you haven't seen it and you enjoy kind of quirky British humor in that way, kind of that dry UK humor, then Waking Ned Devine is a really good thing to watch on St. Patrick's Day. It's got a great soundtrack. It's got a hilarious cast. You're going to recognize a lot of the actors that are in the movie. It's just got some very quirky, silly things, but it's also, it's about relationships, and it's about life and community and how people take care of each other, how you live with, in that small of a community, in that small of a place where everybody is in everybody else's business, and you maybe don't always get along, and there's the one person that just drives everybody crazy. So it's got a lot of really great characters and exploring of relationships, etc. So not going to tell you who won the lottery. You'll have to watch that for yourself. The phrase fruity soaps makes me laugh whenever I think of that movie. If you've seen it, maybe you know why. If you haven't seen it, still not going to tell you. So, books about Ireland. What are your favorites? Maybe you don't like Ireland. Maybe you don't want to read books set in Ireland. But if you do, I would love to know what your favorites are. I know that there are so many that you're probably sitting there going, I can't believe you didn't mention X, Y, and Z. There's a whole series. I can't believe you didn't mention this. And of course, as I said, this, except for the memoir, these were fiction mostly. There are, I'm sure, again, a ton of children's books about St. Patrick's Day. I know that there are a ton of history books. There would be a ton of books about St. Patrick, about the Ireland of St. Patrick's time, or, the Ireland pre-Christianity, the pagan Ireland, and then the Christian Ireland, and just numerous history books. And I'm sure there's many, many fascinating books out there. And probably numerous not so fascinating books as well. But hey, that's just par for the course, right? So what are your favorite books, either about St. Patrick's Day or about Ireland? I would love to hear your thoughts and let me know. So tell me, obviously I missed 99% of the books set in Ireland because this would be an extraordinarily long podcast otherwise. But let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts. I hope that you are having a wonderful St. Patrick's Day weekend. If you celebrate, please do so responsibly. I know green beer is a draw, and the results of green beer, which would be green pea in case you didn't know, and drunkenness. Just be careful, okay? Be safe out there. Don't do anything too crazy. Please join me on Tuesday as I will be interviewing author J.B. Jameson about his Emily Graham series. This is a thriller. She is an FBI agent, a thriller series. There are 2 books currently out with a 3rd one on its way, so we will be talking about that series, and I think you will enjoy it. So join me for that on Tuesday. In the meantime, again, have a wonderful, happy, and safe St. Patrick's Day weekend, and if you have the opportunity, go out there and get yourself lost in a good book. Maybe or maybe not set in Ireland. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Book Review Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.